you.
Mm-hmm.
I get so excited that I always forget. So I'm going to unmute everyone. If you've muted yourself, just unmute yourself and then say hello so we can feel that there are people in the room.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello.
Yay!
Hello.
Look, I'm putting you guys on the Brady Bunch view because I also love to see faces. So if you are in a place
Hi,
where
Christina.
Hi, Cheryl. Yay, we have another person and we've got some Canadians today. Believe me, many of the Americans are thinking, wow, where is that? I wonder what property's like in Canada right now.
How many beds do you have?
All right. So anyway, great to have you all here. Super excited. This is Bouncing You, Building Capacity for the Future. I'm going to keep letting people in as we go. We're just so excited to have you with us. And just a very, very quick introduction. We'll introduce ourselves a little more later. I'm Christina Boyd-Smith, the Corporate Rebel Coach. I work with people doing really deep transformative work, as well as real practical strategies to help your work and your life be a more grounded, calm, and productive place. Anne?
And my name is Ann Lippin. Christina and I are friends and have been friends for over a decade. And she called me a year ago and said, I think we should work together. And I said, okay, not even knowing what she had in mind because I trust Christina implicitly. So I'm a family doctor and my role today is to help ground the transformative work in the physical body and in neuroscience research. So
I love that, oh, hang on. And I'm going to mute everybody.
Okay, and then I'll unmute myself.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, great. And that way, we will definitely, so I want to just be really clear. The chat is open. Throw comments in the chat, throw questions in the chat. At the end, we're going to have a Q&A. We'll give you a little agenda here in a second. But go ahead, Anne. Do your magic while I let people in.
All right. And with everything going on, it's a big deal that you have given yourself this time to be with us today. We appreciate it. We're really glad you're here. And as Christina said, the future is coming. It's coming. It's inevitable that there will be a future. And so you have made a choice today to be empowered and to do this work now so that you can be prepared for a future that you get to have a voice in. We invite you to try some of our capacity building techniques starting this very second. So the first thing that we want you to do, if you have not found a quiet place to be, find a quiet place to be. Figure out how to minimize your distractions. Close out the tabs on your computer so you don't get distracted by the puppy videos on YouTube, and turn off your phone if you can. Set your phone in another room if you can't. It will be there when you're finished. And then
just as a quick example, in my house, to find a quiet place, I'm literally sitting on my bed with a stack of books holding up my computer because I've got a husband. I've given my office to my husband. I've got a child doing high school in the dining room, a child doing high school in another room. So we're all flying the plane and building it at the same time. Anyway, go on, Anne.
Yeah, and be sure you have something to write with, paper and pencil. We're going to be doing exercises today.
Great. I'm going to keep admitting people. So if I seem distracted, I'm just letting people in on the waiting room. So, there's a real potential for things to be very different for you in an hour. Whenever we host something like this, my goal is always that this experience is going to be deeply transformative for you in some way, and that you're going to walk away with at least one thing, and I hope more than one thing, that is going to be immediately applicable to your life. So we're going to hold that as our intention, and that paper and pencil, make sure you take notes, but also know that you don't have to capture everything. Anne and I are going to be sending a follow-up email that will have the recording. So if you missed something, you can listen to it again. We're also going to send you a handout summary of the tips and strategies we're going to give you so that you have that at your fingertips. So don't feel like you have to furiously write everything down. Okay. So let's start with our opening question. So this is, got your paper, got your pencil, and write down what is exhausting or overwhelming you right now. And so just think about, because we're talking about, right, balancing and building capacity for the future. And so the first place we want to talk about, and we're going to go a little more deeply into this in a minute, is overwhelm and exhaustion, which is something I hear from my clients, my friends. You know, you read about it in the news. And so in your own life, what's overwhelming you and exhausting you? And if you, when you're done, if you all just want to list some of those things in the chat, that'd be awesome. Just throw in there, like, the, you know, whatever it is, the news, homeschooling, you know, looking for a job, whatever it is that is, you're finding overwhelming and exhausting. Just throw a list in the chat, and Ann and I are going to add to your list here in a moment. Oh yeah.
Oh boy.
You're speaking Ann's language.
Yes, paper clutter, cleaning my house. Oh yes, working from home, homeschooling, managing people. I'm just giving some highlights from the chat here. The election, the future, all the uncertainty, everything that's unknown. Constant negativity. Not being able to go dancing. Oh yes, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think about too, like all the things that we've had to say goodbye or put on the, you know, put on ice for a while, right? The activities that we enjoy. Go ahead, Ann. What else is?
Oh yeah, Diane mentioned settling my father's death and estate, and that's particularly challenging during this time because all the routine and ritual that we have around death is not something we can do right now.
And we've, you know, normal life continues, right? So there's everything that's happening that's extraordinary, but then we also have normal, regular life, right? Like, you know, I had a little medical procedure. My father-in-law died in, you know, in March, March or April. So it's like, you know, the normal life doesn't stop just because we're surrounded by chaos.
Yes.
So, all right, front line, absolutely, Cheryl, right? We've known each other a long time, right? And it's exhausting helping all these people, and you keep pushing harder. And then, you know, when you are somebody who's in a caregiving profession, right? So like me and you, Cheryl, many of the other people on here who I imagine are in also caregiving professions, where can you go to be cared for? Because it's really important for you to also be cared for. So, all right, I love that the next step we wrote down, tell our personal exhaustion stories. So that's what we're going to do now, right? We're going to quickly tell you our personal exhaustion stories. You know, and mine, neither one of our stories is going to be particularly unique, which is part of the point in telling our stories, right? So school started recently. My children are in a hybrid program. I feel simultaneously elated that they get on a bus and leave the house every day, twice a day, and terrified that they get on a bus and leave the house. Well, and my daughter just started driving, and oh my God, like she's driving them to school now. You know, I spent a few weeks, I think, addictively reading the news, looking for, like, if I just find that article that's gonna like answer the question, or that one commentator, or that one analysis that's gonna make everything better. You know, I was doing too much, right? Like the sourdough, the paddle boarding, you know, oh my gosh, my dogs are getting walked like 4 times a day. And I really was feeling really afraid, and not giving myself the permission to actually feel afraid, because I think I felt if I gave into that, I would just succumb, and then I would never come back. And I really got lost. I got lost in what's important to me as a person. I got lost, and this is all really recent. This is like in the last few weeks. Got lost in how I really feel. I got lost in the kind of choices I want to be able to make to navigate this moment in time. And I was really like jumpy, crabby, overwhelmed, exhausted. And in my case, I just like, I left for 3 days. It was supposed to be 2. And then I called my husband, and I'm like, I'm staying an extra day. And I like locked myself in the attic of a bed and breakfast in a town a couple hours away from here. And I spent some time really reflecting and feeling and planning and thinking about, like, how do I want to navigate this moment in time? And it really gave me an ability to come back to myself, to be able to think about my energy, to think about the decisions I want to make and how I want to move forward with a clear head. And so here we are today, launching this. This is part of the results. So there, my most recent personal exhaustion story.
And I'll tell a slightly more distant personal exhaustion story, which started when COVID really hit in Minnesota. My husband works in long-term care facilities. He goes to 6 different long-term care facilities in the Twin Cities. And when COVID started rampaging through long-term care, he was given one N95 mask, one cover gown, and one face shield, and absolutely no instruction or guidance around how to treat patients with COVID and how to keep himself safe. And so I got on my hamster wheel. I jumped on Facebook. I called all the contractors I know. Anybody have extra N95s? My mother dragged out her sewing machine, made cover gowns, made hats. And then Stuart, my husband, and I both got on the computer to do research, figure out what do we know about this virus? What do we know from other viruses that we've dealt with in the past about how to keep you safe? But I was exhausted. I was sleeping in the early days. If I had an opportunity to sleep 10 or 11 hours, I was doing it. I was crabby. I was impatient with our son, and things have improved slightly since things were really out of control. He's been given one more N95 mask, so that's nice.
I gave him one. He has 3.
Yeah, well, we actually have a big pile from friends. Thank you, friends. We love friends. Yeah, it's been exhausting. It's been an interesting challenge, and I call Christina a lot. And I'm like, Christina, my friend, the life coach, help me.
So, all right. So here we are, right? And we wanted to tell you these stories so that you can see that we are in it. We're in it just along with you. And so here's our agenda for today. We're going to give you some context around what we're talking about, which is fundamentally managing your energy. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And then we're going to give you 2 keys, like 2 really solid categories of things that you can do and be to help you manage your energy. And then at the end of the call, we're going to talk just a little bit about the Clarity You program that Ann and I have coming up, the group program. I thought about wearing my mask, Tom. So we're going to talk about Clarity You, the group program that we have coming up and where you can go to get more information. And then we're also going to have a Q&A. So I really hope you'll throw any questions that come up along the way, either jot them down to throw into the chat later, throw them into the chat now, and we'll grab them. I'll grab them so that we make sure we answer your questions towards the end. So let's just dive in. So let's talk about energy. There was a really great book called The Power of Full Engagement. You don't necessarily need to go and read the book, but I think the takeaway is crucial, which is that we think what we need to be managing is our time. But in fact, what we need to be managing is our energy. So I'll say that again, we think the focus should be on time. I have this many hours in the day to do all these things, but instead we want to put our focus on our energy. And so the truth is then when you think you don't have time for something, the more accurate truth is that you don't have the energy for something. And so let me give you a really stark example of this. Many, many, many years ago when my children were little, I was working in a corporate job. I had kids in daycare. I was doing the whole rush around, pick them up, get them to activities. So life was extremely full. And you would not imagine that I would be able to fit anything else into that life. And here's a random fun fact about me. I speak Nepali because I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Nepal. And I got a phone call from a friend who said, there are all these Bhutanese refugees coming to Minnesota who speak Nepali. There's a family, one family, 6 people, and we need help. Would you be willing to be involved in helping to resettle this family of refugees? And I said, yes. I'm uniquely qualified, right? How many people speak Nepali, right? So I said yes. I became the legal guardian for 6 months for a family of 6, 2 parents who needed to get jobs, needed to learn English, right? Needed to deal with housing, 3 girls, one in middle school, one in elementary school, one in preschool, as well as the elderly aunt that they brought with them who needed, healthcare and Social Security. And so this involved doctor's appointments and figuring out schools and housing and teaching them where to grocery shop and all this sort of stuff. I wasn't doing it alone. There was a group of people, but you would think there was no room in my life, if you looked at it in terms of time, where would I put being the legal guardian for a family of Bhutanese refugees. There was no place to put it. And the fact of the matter is, it was easy to help this family. Not easy in the sense, like, obviously there were a lot of challenges, but in terms of fitting it into my life, it became really easy. It was as if time expanded and there was time to do this, because the energy around it was so full of love and commitment. And so I would take my children with me to go and talk to them about, subsidized housing while they were, my kids would be sitting in my lap and I'd be talking to the family. We would eat meals at their house while we did paperwork, so it became possible, not because I found more time, but because the energy was aligned with kind of my unique gifts, passions, and purposes. And this is just an example, right? This specific, right, Tom makes the point, right? I was happy to do it until it became abundantly clear that it was time for this family to be independent. And then it started to feel like a burden, right? The energy changed, and it was time to then make a change, because then it did start to feel like I don't have time. And so this is an example, and you can probably think of many, many times in your life where you found something where all of a sudden the energy the time expanded because your energy changed. And do you want to add anything to that comment? No. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about, we're going to talk about some of the things that are depleting our energy right now. And the things that, like, when we think about the example you wrote down of where in your life you feel exhausted or you feel overwhelmed, here's some of what's going on for us. So one is, we are managing a tremendous amount of discrepancy, things that we cannot cognitively reconcile. So it's kind of like your brain is like a cell phone. And you imagine, like, right now, my cell phone is sitting here beside me. It's just like, it's turned off. I'm not doing anything, but there are apps that are running on that cell phone. And when I pick it up, if I leave it here all day, when I pick it up tonight, the battery is going to be depleted, even though I didn't do anything with that cell phone. And your brain is the same, right? I mean, all the time, but particularly right now, you're running all these apps in the background that are taking your energy. So some of these discrepancies, and think about some of the ones you have in your own life, maybe throw them into the chat, are things like, I really relish my children's independence, right? They're teenagers. I love that they're going to school. And I feel like there may be dangers associated with sending them to school. That's a discrepancy that I carry every day, right? I would love to see my parents at Christmas, and going to see my parents potentially, like, could kill them, right? So this is like, that's a discrepancy that's not reconcilable. And throw some in. I'm just trying to think of, like, people with young children. You want your kids to be able to play on the playground, but is playing on the playground a safe choice, right?
And just things that we took for granted, getting a haircut, going to the grocery store, now they're all fraught. You can't just go get a haircut, go see a movie.
Right. And so we're carrying a lot of irreconcilable discrepancies, and those are part of the kind of subconscious wearing down of our batteries, right? So that's one of the reasons why you can feel like you didn't do anything for a day, and you get to like 8 o'clock, maybe 8 o'clock's even generous sometimes, 7 o'clock, and you are just toast. You got nothing, right? So there's one, discrepancies. That's depleting our energy.
Yes. And I want to talk for a minute about the concept of surge capacity related to energy. Toast and then I can't sleep. Yes.
Totally.
Comment. Right? Toast and then I can't sleep, because your mind is still churning all of this. So surge capacity in healthcare refers to the ability to manage a sudden influx of patients. And you need, a management plan, you need space, you need staffing, you need to deal with contagion, and you can flex all those variables in order to accommodate a big influx of patients. Well, Ann Maston is at the University of Minnesota. She's a psychologist, and she brought the idea of surge capacity down to a one human level. That what is surge capacity in an individual? And what it is our ability to step up in a crisis using mental and physical adaptations. So Christina described her surge capacity around the Bhutanese refugee family, that she could really step up and her time kind of flexed so that she could accommodate all these things she needed to do. For me and my husband, in the early days of COVID, we were researching, finding supplies for him, doing all kinds of activities that we had to add into our daily life in order to keep him safe. Surge capacity is by nature short term. You can only sustain this kind of level of energy expenditure for a short period of time. And the problem is when the crisis continues or becomes sort of a rolling domino, one crisis after another, then you burn out. So potentially think about folks in California. You know, COVID hits and they lose their job, and then there's a wildfire, and then they lose their house, and in the meantime there's no school and no church, and all the support structures that we've been relying on are stressed and broken right now. So schools, hospitals, churches, family, and consequently you're exhausted, you're grieving, your mood is all over the place, and you're feeling, sometimes people feel kind of a malaise, just like, ugh. Bottom line is, we've earned our exhaustion. You know, you exceed your surge capacity, you've earned your exhaustion. I'd like to
Yay, you've earned your exhaustion.
Yay!
Pat yourself on the back.
You earned it.
Like I said, even the things that aren't great, we have a good sense of humor about it.
So let's think about energy expenditure through a lens of decision making, and because I'm supposed to bring neuroscience, I'm going to bring a little neuroscience. Although Christina did tell me I couldn't be overly nerdy. So
I'm like, she's going to totally like nerd out and go all doctory on us. And I was like, you can only nerd out a little bit because we got a lot to cover.
We're going to go all brain. I just have, and you can put this in the chat. Give me some guesses. How many decisions do you think an average adult makes in the course of a day? Any ideas? How many decisions? 10,000.
Okay, we got 1,000, 10,000, over 1,000.
Yeah. So, all right, 35,000 is researchers' best estimate on the number of decisions that we make over the course of a day. And children make a whopping 3,000 decisions in the course of a day, which is a lot. So how do we make decisions? What actually happens in our brain? Our brain gathers all kinds of information. Do women make more, says Alicia. You know, Alicia, that's a really good question. That's a really good question.
I don't think we know. We'll find out.
You. Your brain, in order to make decisions, gathers information from various structures. So it gathers memories from the hippocampus, and then it pulls in emotional information from deep structures in the brain, like the amygdala, and it goes and taps into the information in the anterior cingulate cortex, which is sort of your inner judge, your inner values system. You can think of it as your internal RBG. So it takes all that information, and then your prefrontal cortex does a gigantic, to use economic terms, cost-benefit analysis. And if you want to use psychological terms, it's more a risk-reward analysis. Looks at all of the information gathered from the various structures of the brain, and you make a decision utilizing all this information. This process is not conscious. I'm not thinking to myself, all right, I'm going to pull information from my hippocampus now. Your brain just does this. This is remarkable. So before COVID, let's think about a decision. Let's think about the decision that I go out to eat with, oh yes, we're going to talk.
Yeah, I'll take care of the chat. You keep going.
All right, you get the chat, I'll just talk.
I got it, you talk.
All right, excellent. So before COVID, I have a long-standing date with friends once a month to go out to eat. We go to the same restaurant every time. I may or may not order the same food. This is not something that I have to think about. This is not something that I have to spend energy on. We simply do it. It actually gives me energy to be around my friends, to go out to eat with them. Now, after COVID, what does that decision look like? Well, let's pull it through the brain. So my hippocampus pulls up some memories. It remembers that that restaurant's very small, the tables are close together. Last time I went out with these friends, everyone was like coughing and sneezing and laughing and hugging, and the number of COVID cases is rising in Minnesota. And then I think, well, but I'm a healthy person and I would likely survive the infection. But on the other hand, there have been restaurants in town where people have gotten together and then there have been outbreaks. So there are some memories that my hippocampus is contributing to the equation. And I pull in some emotional information from my amygdala. And the truth of the matter is I've been irritated with some of these friends because I feel like they aren't taking things seriously enough. I enjoy seeing my friends, but I could have enjoyment in other ways. It doesn't have to be in a restaurant setting. I'm afraid of COVID, and oh my goodness, what if I killed my parents? So now let's tug in some information from the anterior cingulate cortex, my inner RBG.
See, I told you she's totally going to nerd out on the medical stuff. Isn't this awesome? Keep going. This is
So,
great.
okay, so my inner RBG says it's bad to kill your parents. And she also says, well, I have a value over public health, and I value public health over individual pleasure. And then there's a recognition of my privilege as a person who is able to have access to healthy food and healthy eating. So my prefrontal cortex takes all of this information and munches on it like a big smorgasbord and comes to the conclusion that there is absolutely no way I'm going out to eat with these friends. And after that, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted from calling my friends and saying I'm not going and having to explain to them why I'm not going. And so what do? I watch animal rescue videos on YouTube, and I eat the pie that Christina gave me that she made from delicious apples.
So you can see we've got three things, right? The discrepancies, the depletion of our surge capacity, and the absolute just monumental number of decisions and the complexity of those decisions that we are making every day. So imagine what Ann just described times 35,000 every day, right? And you're like, oh my God, no wonder I'm so tired, right? So here's the next question. So in your journaling, and I'd love for you to throw your answers just briefly into the chat as well. So what's the fallout of everything we've talked about? So these realities of like being exhausted, having to make a gajillion decisions, the stress of all of this, what's the fallout in your life? Like how does it affect you? How does it affect your daily living? Okay, mental health suffers. Unease. Totally. Keep typing, right? Personal relationship suffer. This is one Ann and I talked about a lot, right? Like everything now becomes this interpersonal issue. You know, Ann and I, for example, have very different risk tolerances. And so, you know, we've had to negotiate that, and it takes a lot of energy to negotiate that in a friendship, or calling up, you know, somebody and being like, I'm not coming over. Or when one of your friends, you invite them and they say, well, we're not coming over, and you feel hurt, right? Mm-hmm. Actually staying in the house, never going out because it's too much, feeling like you're not accomplishing anything, less productive, right? Avoidance, judgment, disconnection, anger, depression, burnout, not being your best, feeling lazy, judging yourself. Like, yeah. Fill in the blank. I'm looking at our list, and I think they've like covered everything.
Yeah, and I would like to just point out that we're all in this together. We're all feeling all of these things, and I think to normalize that for people is important.
Yes. Right? Like that's one of the reasons why we really wanted you to put it in the chat, right? So that you all could see that you're not alone. And there's another piece of this is the feeling of like, I'm the only one who's somehow not keeping up, right? You go on social media and you see the beautiful, oh my God, somebody put up a picture of like their canning, and it was like the carrots were shaped like flowers, and it was all arranged in this way. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, right? Like I can barely get dinner on the table, right? Let alone like make my canning a work of art. So social media, we're going to talk about that too. Okay. So back to our agenda. So we promised that we were going to talk a little bit about why we're so exhausted, right? Like what is going on so that you can normalize your experience and feel like you are a very healthy human being who is having a challenging moment in time. All right, so we've done that, hopefully. And now we really want to talk about the 2 keys to energy preservation. I sometimes like to call this your energy preservation program, which Ann likes to refer to as your, how do you pronounce it? Like your EP. Your EP. So your energy preservation program. And we're going to divide it into 2 categories. The first category is things that you can do to preserve your energy. And then the second category is going to be the things that you can be to preserve your energy. And we'll explain that when we get there.
And I'm doing the doing part, and Christina's doing the being part, because that's the way we operate. So we're going to talk about 4 strategies for doing that will help you preserve your energy. The first one is one of my favorites. It's cutting the chaff. So it's going through, getting rid of extraneous stuff that you literally don't need to think about ever again. You don't need to make decisions about this ever again. So it's things like, I get maybe 10 or 15 just junky emails that I never interact with. I never do anything with them. So yesterday, in preparation for this talk, I went through and I unsubscribed from them to set a good example. So unsubscribe.
Not the corporate rebel, because it's really awesome and useful.
Yeah, don't unsubscribe from corporate rebel.
It's energy giving. Go ahead.
Another thing would be like unfriending the folks on social media who aren't doing anything for your energy level, who are actually sucking your energy. You're not going to have an ongoing relationship with them. It's okay to unfriend them. That's fine. Getting rid of the stuff in your house that you don't need, cutting out activities that you're doing only out of obligation. You feel like these things don't take much of your energy, but the reality is they do, because you're making little decisions about all of them. When I look at my junk email, I'm looking at each of 20 things saying, let's see, can I get rid of that? Can I get rid of that? Can I get rid of that? Have I ever done anything with that? Those are all little decisions. And you have less energy to ponder critical questions like, am I risking my child's life if I send them to school? So Christina is really good about having everything in its place in her house. So like the scissors are I know where they are in her house. So I can go and find the scissors in Christina's house more easily than I can find the scissors in my own house. So get a place for everything, put it in its place.
I want to say something about that though, because it's not just like, it's not that I am controlling and I have to have things a certain way. It's that I want to make sure that the energy that I'm putting out into the world is I'm using it wisely. And when I spend time having to look for the scissors, that is an unwise use of my energy, which makes me less able then to have a meaningful conversation with my husband, to produce events like this, right? To serve my clients, because the energy is going someplace that is an absolute waste of my time. So you better know where your glasses are, because I'm not gonna, no, I always know where the glasses are. Go ahead.
Great. The second doing strategy for energy preservation is around routines, good routines. So structure things in your life so that you're not having to make decisions all the time. Get up at 8 a.m., shower, eat breakfast, brush your teeth. All of this can be in a routine. This stuff needs to be individualized, as Christina and I discovered when we were preparing this talk, because I was like, isn't it a great idea to set up a routine where Monday's pizza night, Tuesday's spaghetti night, Wednesday's chicken night, Thursday's salmon night? And Christina literally rolled her eyes and smirked at me. And the reason that happened is because food procurement and making food is energy giving for Christina, but for me it's like literally soul sucking. So a routine for me that is energy preserving would not be energy preserving for her. The third doing strategy for energy preservation is around physical practices. This makes perfect sense. You have to make sure that your body is optimally ready for your day. And these things are so obvious, and yet many people are not doing them. Sleeping. You need to sleep. You've got to give your brain time to rejuvenate and also to consolidate all the stuff that happens during the course of the day. So for adults, that's a minimum of 7 hours a day of sleep, more likely 8 or 9. Eating, making sure you're eating regularly. And here's the hot tip from this talk. Eat breakfast. If you don't eat breakfast, start eating breakfast, truly. Your brain needs energy in order to function. Then the other thing is, again, obvious, but a lot of people aren't doing it, exercise. So sleeping, eating, exercising. The fourth doing strategy around action is to have, the fourth doing strategy for energy preservation is around action. To have a mindset towards action. What does this mean? It means only ruminate on the things that actually deserve your attention. Don't delay or avoid the things that are inevitable. For me, what I did was I used to pay all of our bills individually online every month. I would have to make little micro decisions about all that stuff. No, that can be all put on autopilot. So I put all the bills on auto pay. Another example is if your dishwasher breaks down, you need a new dishwasher. Do you spend an entire day running around to various stores in all the COVID muck looking for a new model of dishwasher? No, you do 5 minutes of internet research on dishwashers and you order yourself one up.
Unless
unless
it is
you love,
life-giving to you to do research. If you
yeah,
love that, I don't love that. I find it exhausting. But my husband and my father-in-law would spend days poring over consumer reports to figure out which car to buy. And they were connecting and it was fun and they loved it. And I had about 2 minutes of attention for it. I'm like, I don't care. Walk onto the dealership, buy that one and leave, right? Like, so if it's life-giving for you, do it. If it's not, oh my God, cut it.
right? And then the last example I'll use is a voting plan. We've got an election coming in November. Have you figured out how you're going to vote? Just stop thinking about it, make your plan, and enact your plan. So at this point, we're going to have you do another little journal exercise based on what we've talked about with some strategies, some doing strategies for energy preservation. What's one thing you can think of that might change in your life? And you can write it in your journal, you can write it in the chat, let us know. What's one thing you might change in your doing in order to help preserve your energy?
And feel free as well to refer back to the thing that's exhausting you, right? So if you look back to the thing that's exhausting you, then you can just say, all right, here's one thing. And it might be something really simple, right? So like Alicia says, I'm going to have a mindset to action, which is a more global change. You can also like very easily be like, yep, I'm going to get rid of some stuff. And you can start with literally like, when I need to shift the energy, I clean my office supplies drawer. And you guys, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is going to be on the recording. I take out all the pens and pencils. I test everything to see if it's working. I throw away the ones that aren't. I refill the lead in the mechanical pencils. I refill the ink. I organize them by type. I guess I am a little controlling, and I put them all back in the drawer. But this is like, it's like I can start because it's so doable. When I'm like, oh, I think I'm going to clean all the clutter in my whole house. That's just way too much to handle. But I can do the junk drawer, or I can do the office supplies drawer. And it's very satisfying because then, every time you reach in there, no decision needed, no hunting, every pen works.
So Christina, you're creating some devotees in the chat. We've got some folks who are going to get rid of stuff in the house, less clutter. They're going to identify and eliminate the extraneous. They're going to de-junk room by room.
Awesome.
Hooray. And unsubscribe to junk email. Diane says she's going to start doing meditation and not just talking about it. That's fabulous.
Exactly.
Energy you've spent talking when you could actually be meditating.
Well, and I'll just say like that, it brings us back to the idea, I think it was number 2 of setting a routine. I meditate at 9 o'clock. I mean, I don't, I'm just using that as an example, but right. Like I walk the dogs when my kids go to school, I walk the dogs. Done. I don't have to think about when I'm walking the dogs. Am I going to walk the dogs today? Do I have time to walk the dogs today? Nope. I just walk the dogs and I listen to the news. Right. So there's make it a routine so that you're not having to have a conversation with yourself over and over. Okay. So we've got some things that you all are going to do differently. Woo. So let's now talk about the being. So we have why we're so exhausted. We have the doing as part of the 2 keys to your energy preservation program. And now we're going to talk about the being of your energy preservation program. And so I'm trying to think, okay, here's how I want to explain it. Who you are and the energy that you have around you as you are approaching any action matters. It matters a lot. So you can take the same action from what I call different come from places. So you can come from a place where your action is aligned with your values, it's fun, it feels lighthearted, or you can come from a place where you are grasping and pushing and trying to look good to other people. And the same words might come out of your mouth, the same action might happen, and either you'll get different results. So Let me give you a personal example, and I'll give you a client example. So I have permission to tell this client example from a number of years ago. He's like, yeah, share my story with anybody. So, high potential manager, going to work every day, managing his team, going to meetings, holding a lot of beliefs around what it took to be successful in a corporate environment. And he was stressed out. He would literally like block off certain parts of himself as he was on his commute to work. And he would arrive at work having buttoned down all of these creative parts of himself. And so he was, kind of losing it in meetings, and his team was really stressed out. And when he started to change from approaching his work from a place of stress and fear and constriction, and started to really bring his full creativity. I mean, he's a quirky, awesome guy. And he started to bring those quirky things. He started making grilled cheese at his desk for his staff, and like just allowing himself to be fully himself. He did the same things, went to work every day, commuted, managed his team, went to meetings, but he was coming from such a different place that his director commented like, it's a complete 180, right? His team is now relaxed, right? They're more productive than they ever have. He got promoted. He was planning, when he started with me, to leave the company. He stayed for another 9 years until he went on to become a consultant when he had children. And so like it was a completely different outcome, not because the circumstances of his life changed. Nothing changed. It was simply that he changed the way he was being with the circumstances of his life. So let's talk a little bit about how you, quote unquote, do being, okay? So one is, the first one is letting go of resistance. So it is resistance that causes us to suffer. It's not the circumstances that cause us to suffer. Now, that doesn't mean, so let's take COVID as our example, right? Like,
Christina.
yeah.
Yeah, just so the first time you said this to me, I was like stopped dead in my tracks.
Okay.
I want you to just say that again.
Okay, I will. So it is not the circumstances that cause you to suffer. It is your resistance to the circumstances that cause you to suffer. So I want to be really clear. This does not mean rainbows and unicorns all the time, right? COVID-19 sucks. And we have all had to give up a lot of important things. I have spent months grieving high school, that my children don't get this year of high school. They better, by God, get next year. But that's another thing. I have not reached acceptance on that one yet, right? But I have spent months grieving that. Being sad about it is part of acceptance. But if I just dig in my heels, and even like spiritually, I refuse to accept the situation that we're in, I can't move forward, right? And I am causing my own suffering. A great example that I like to use is a dear family friend of ours, someone I've known since I was a young child. It's a couple, they don't have any children. So my brother and I are kind of their children. And they discovered a few years ago that the man had a very rare illness that was usually not diagnosed in adults. And very quickly after the discovery of this illness, like, he died. And the two of them were such a close couple. They were so much a part of each other's lives. And of course, it's terrible that she lost her husband, right? Of course, she grieves and she's sad about it. But what was amazing was to watch her be in acceptance about it. So instead of resisting and acting as if, well, he's not gone, and I refuse to believe that he's gone, and I'm not going to move on, and I'm going to continue with my life exactly as it was when he was here, she has accepted his loss, which has allowed her to create a new life and a new relationship with him in spirit. It's been really beautiful to watch. And so this idea of accepting our circumstances does not mean everything's perfect all the time, but it does mean surrendering, right? And allowing ourselves to accept the circumstances that we're in. And then we can decide what to do about it, how we want to handle it, how we want to be with it. So that's the first step, is letting go of your resistance. The second one to how do you do the being part of preserving your energy is to do what I call plugging your energy leaks. So energy gets wasted, and we've talked a little bit about this in so many ways, right? When we are blaming other people, when we are judging ourselves, when we are overthinking decisions, when we're annoyed, when we're second guessing, when we're giving our power to other people, when you're criticizing yourself, right? When you're comparing, oh my gosh, their canning is better than my canning, or they're canning and I'm not canning. All of that is just wasted energy. There is nothing useful in any of that activity for you, right? And so your energy is just leaking out of you. It's kind of like why my scissors are in the same place. I don't want my energy leaking out looking for the scissors. I want to be able to consciously choose how I'm using my energy and where I'm going to spend it, right? In the activities and the things that I want to do. So first one, letting go of resistance. Second one, plugging your energy leaks. The third one is being able to embrace complexity and paradox. So we talked about how we're carrying all these discrepancies in our brains. And wouldn't it be awesome if there was like a magic wand that got waved and everything was fixed, right? Or there was one person who could swoop in and fix everything. That's just not going to happen, right? That's not the way that human life works. And so being able to embrace complexity in everything is actually, weirdly, the pathway to ease. Like we think, if I just find the easy answer, if I just fix this thing, then I'm going to feel ease in my life. That's not how it works. Embracing the complexity is what's going to bring you ease and is going to relieve your sense of being, so that you can move forward more elegantly, more with more flow. And the last one is to really let your being be the foundation for your doing. So like start with being first and then do the doing. And so here's a great example of that. And while I'm telling this example, just spend a few minutes journaling. What's the being that you want to bring to the doing that you just committed to? So in decluttering my house frequently, I make it a game. I just sort of enjoy like competing with myself in that way. And I'm like, okay, can I get rid of 50 things? Right? Or like, yeah, how many pens can I throw away because they don't work? Number 4 was let your being be the foundation of your doing. So here's an example, a recent example. I'm writing letters to get out the vote. And there was a big event on Monday where the cast of Hamilton was sponsoring like a letter writing campaign. And I was going to do this and I sent it to Anne, and then Anne emailed me and she was like, hey, should we do this together? And I was like, sure, maybe we can do it online. She's like, no, I want to come to your backyard and let's write letters. Okay. If she had asked me a week before, let's organize an event and let's write letters and listen to Hamilton, I would have been like, God, no, there's no way I can handle this, right? Like there's just too much going on. So my being around it would have been very constricted. I would have felt pressured. Oh my God, like, am I doing enough, right? And instead, when Anne asked me, I was like, oh, looking around, this could be fun. I'll make pie, because pie is in for every occasion. I'll make pie. And let's just reach out to a few more people and see if anybody else wants to come over and eat pie and write some letters. And like, before we knew it, we had a party in our backyard, right? We had 4 people and we sat under the beautiful lights and we ate apple pie and pumpkin pie because I had all the energy in the world. I was like, I'm going to make 2 pies. I'm not just going to make 1 pie, right? And it was just because the being of it just felt so loving and connected and fun. A week ago, I never would have been able to organize this event. Not in a million, not on your life. And so that's an example about how letting the being can drive the doing. So let's just see in the chat, a few of you throw in like, what's the being that you want to bring to your doing? And that's like, it can be more joy, lightheartedness, make it a game. No, you had to write. You still had to write the letters. The pie, you got the pie after we wrote letters.
That's true. Christina was a bit stingy with when she gave the pie. We had to be like right at the end.
It's kind of like Hamilton. They saved all the great songs on the, while we were watching it. They didn't give us the best songs first.
I thought you were baking the pie while others were writing the card.
Oh no, the pies I baked them in the afternoon. They were ready to go.
I would have been fine with that though, Tom. I would have written so many letters on Christina's behalf if I got to eat pie. Anne talks about wanting to be calm. Cheryl talks about embracing complexity.
Yes, right? Being able to see the complexity of it. So while you all are still thinking and putting those in the chat, I want to talk just for a second about Claire to You, and then let's take some more, we'll unmute everybody and take some more questions. So Anne and I did this program last year with a really great group of people. And we were originally we were planning to launch Claire to You again in January. We just thought there was so much going on. And then I started to get tons of requests from people who were like, I need some help. I'm stressed out. Like, can you come and present to this team? You know, people responding to the newsletters that I send out. And so we really realized that we're living in this time of absolute inevitable change, right? It's happening so fast that we really don't have a great ability to absorb all the change that's happening and to figure out how we want to integrate it into our lives. I think, you know, working from home, homeschooling, job losses, financial insecurity, the fallout from COVID-19, you know, all of the loss associated with that, watching the news on a national and international level, it's just rapid. And so this is honestly like the perfect time to, because the energy of change is around us right now, it's the perfect time to be thinking about what are the changes that you want to make in your life, both on a tactical level, as well as the way you want to be with your life and your work. So we decided to move the date forward. We're launching it on the 21st of October. For anybody who wants to be part of a community that's going to be engaged in deep personal transformation, professional and personal development. And really fundamentally, it's about clarity, right? Cleaning out the junk that has been holding you back and then making way for new ways of being, having a toolbox full of strategies and tips that are going to move you into the future, because like we said, the future is inevitable. It's coming. It's a 9-month program. We're going to be starting at the end of October. Anybody and everybody who wants to join starts with a conversation with me. We do have some additional information. And if you just want to throw my email, or actually throw the link to sign up to talk to me into the chat.
I already put it in there.
Oh, great. So there's a link if you want to talk to me, just to sign up for a 30-minute session. Many of you have talked to me before. I'm not a hard sell. This is not a, you know, really like challenging sales call, right? Like I really want to know what's going on for you and then help you make an assessment about what's the next best fit for you and if Claire to You is part of that or not, right? The answer can be no. And so the group honestly started filling, people started signing up before we even had a chance to start building it. Like we were barely had our feet under us and people were already saying yes and signing up. So sign up for a time to talk with me, shoot me an email if you just want an additional, we've got a page of information. We're happy to share that. I want to say there's an early bird price going through October 9th. And if you sign up by the 30th of September, so sometime in the next, 7 days. We're also doing 2 bonus calls in October because we don't want people who sign up early to be waiting all the way until the 21st of October. We're going to do 2 bonus calls for that group. So, all right, there's Claire to You. Reach out, sign up to chat with me. We'd love to have you. So let's do our questions and answers. And I'm gonna, oh, Mary, you're so sweet. Oh, I love you. Thank you for saying that. Really, like I'm gonna get a little teary. I'm gonna unmute everybody. Mute yourself if you've got, you know, kids or background noise. Feel free to unmute yourself here. Let's have some questions or comments on what we've talked about. We've got about 5 minutes, which is plenty of time. Thoughts, questions, things that didn't make sense, or things that made sense but you want a little more.
One of the things that I've been thinking about lately is through the exhaustion and sort of the overall general feeling of being worthless. I mean, that's just strong of a word, but you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Is that I've come to realize that in the past, pre-COVID, I pull energy from other people. I get my energy from engaging, you know, in nonverbal communication and just from being around other people's energy. And so that source, that channel has been completely cut off from me because everything's Zoom now. So
Yes.
it's just harder. I just think it's harder for me to energize in the ways that I used to be used to.
I think that's a really great point, Mary. And you know, this is an extrovert's nightmare, right? And I live in an introverted family. All both my children and my husband. And so you know, we can talk offline if you want about this. I recognize, because of the family I'm in and also because of the situation we're in, I have high social needs and I have to figure out how to take care of them, right? You know, I go to the grocery store sometimes 2 times a day, simply because I have to talk to the clerk. I have to be around other people, right? I like when I have an ambient conversation, like we're not allowed in my children's school, of course, right? But like if I bump into somebody in the parking lot, which I don't get to do very often because my daughter's driving now and I don't get to go to school, but sometimes I just engineer reasons to like go there, and I bump into a teacher or an administrator. Oh my God, like that'll keep me going for days. Oh, I talked to somebody who's not in my family in person, you know, standing 6 feet apart on the lawn. So I totally recognize that. And there are ways to be aware of what your needs are and get them met without being weird.
Okay.
Other questions? Fire 'em at us, folks.
If both of what you're saying is true with the doing the preservation of it and being the preservation of it, I'm wondering, with the embracing of the complexity, if you're drawing in from your depression or whatever you're feeling, like the lady before who was cut off from the outside, like how are you supposed to embrace the complexity if you are, so I guess, sort of floundering, trying to get out of the monotony or the Groundhog Day, if you will?
I'm going to make sure I understand your question. So your question is like, in the midst of all of everything that's going on, how do you embrace complexity?
Yes. Like if if all your energy is already sucked out of you,
Yeah.
how do you get the energy to embrace the complexity? I guess I'm asking.
It's an interesting chicken and egg question.
Yeah. Christina,
ahead,
can I give the preface to your
Yeah.
answer?
Yeah.
So if, as a doctor, I want to just inject this in and say, if you have doubt in your mind about whether what you're feeling and going through is within the realm of, you know, like you're going to be fine on your own coming out of this, or if there's an actual question, check in with your doctor. Go in and check. And this isn't directly in response to your comment, Cheryl, but I do want to kind of dig under this and just let folks know, if you have a question about, you know, what's the status of my mental health? Am I within the realm of acceptable right here? Do I need to get some professional, like, get a doctor's opinion is kind of the bottom line around that. If you need a doctor's opinion, get a doctor's opinion, because all the things that we're talking about, Christina, you can add your next.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say is it's a chicken and egg question, right?
Yeah.
So, and it really dovetails beautifully with what you're saying. And there's some foundational pieces, right, then that you need to take care of. Like, are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? Like sometimes the simplest solution to being able to kind of claim back sanity within the chaos is like the most basic thing, right? I started running again recently. Occasionally I'm not a competitive runner. I go half mile, a mile, because my daughter started playing soccer and she wanted me to run with her. Oh my God, just running once changed my life. I was like, this is amazing. And so sometimes, Cheryl, it's coming back to some of those very foundational pieces and just making one decision. I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to get to bed at 9 o'clock every night. I'm going to exercise, whatever it is, to start to take ownership of the dynamic and the feeling of Groundhog Day. And the second piece, which relates directly to the complexity, is part of what causes the suffering is the like, oh my God, I'm in Groundhog Day. Why am I doing this again? Here we are. It's like, no, acceptance. It goes back to that question of like surrendering and letting go of the resistance. Stop resisting the Groundhog Day, right? Just it's like, okay, we're in Groundhog Day. Oh my gosh, this day is an awful lot like the last one. I don't have any topics to talk to my husband about anymore, right? I mean, literally, there have been times when I'm like, I'm sorry, I would love to go on a walk with you, but I don't have anything to say because we've talked about everything. We actually have started keeping a list. Here's some topics that we can talk about together so that we've got some things to talk about because we see each other all the time, right? And so it's acceptance.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we're at the end of time. Oh, we're at the end of time. So what I would love to do, so if anybody wants to stick around for a few more minutes, and do you have a couple more minutes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if anybody wants to stick around and ask some more questions, please do. But I want to make sure to honor time for people who need to get to meetings or have other things going. And so thank you so much for coming. Please reach out, sign up for a time to talk with me. We'd love to chat about what's going on in your life and see if Claire to You might be useful. Come on October 8th, we're doing our second part of this series where we're going to be talking about building that foundation that you're talking about, Cheryl. Like, how do you become the solid foundation in your own life when everything around you refuses to provide that solid foundation anymore? So if you need to drop off, drop off. If you want to stick around and ask some more questions, we're happy to stick around for another 10 minutes or so and give you some more support. And Jing, I just want to say, so great to see you from North Carolina. I just want to give a shout out to Jing. Hi, Jing. Like, and I know Pam, that you're here too. I think Pam Everts is here, and it looks like your daughter might be here, which is like super awesome. Email me offline. Like I said, I know some of you and some of you I don't. So, all right, those of you who have stuck around, let's hear some more questions or what you're thinking about.
Christina, I was just, I wanted to just share that some of the changes that I've made, somebody had mentioned earlier, starting to meditate. And what I have found easier is to just start small. So meditate for a minute and tomorrow do another minute until you get used to it. And in terms of building energy, every morning, a short list, 3 items of what I'm grateful for, and at night, 3 items that I accomplished that day, so that you have some sort of at least self-support.
Yeah, well, and I'll say, Tom, last night, there was a lot of news, and my husband, I hadn't seen it yet, and he told me about, sort of what happened with Breonna Taylor and what was happening, and I could feel myself. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to sleep. And so I said to him, like, next time, if I haven't seen it, don't tell me until the morning, because I need to be able to manage my sleep. So Cheryl goes to the question, right? It's not that I'm going to ignore important things happening in the world, but I am going to prioritize my sanity so that I have the ability to be with it. And then the second thing is, so I could feel myself getting worked up. So I connected with my husband and talked to him. I did your box breathing, Tom, that you taught us. I really did. And I did a practice that I do every night, which is as my head hits the pillow, I either pray, which I've been praying a lot more lately, or I list off the things from my day that I'm grateful for. And it's just in my head. I don't write them down, right? And it sends me off to a place where I can sleep. And they're just little tiny things. And I slept fine all night. I woke up refreshed. I'm able to be with the world as it is, right? And being exhausted, physically exhausted, is never good for my mental health. Never. Even one night of depleted sleep can set me back. So others, you're here still. Questions. And Liz, you joined us, and we're so glad. And we're doing our Q&A. We're wrapping up. So if you missed the live presentation, it'll be on a recording that we'll send you.
I'm the one who said I was dealing with my father's estate. I'm Jewish, and sitting Shiva is the way we usually hang out with morning, and lots of people and lots of food, you know, but I couldn't do that. So I was alone, and that was really bad. But the good news was there wasn't a lot of food, extra food in my house, so I didn't need to eat everything. And I managed to actually get really into my feelings because I didn't have to worry about anybody being there. Not that you're supposed to worry, but most of us are human and we do. So I found something really interesting, and I've been dealing with it in terms of ignoring it. But I really spent the last 2 years of my life cultivating a accepting relationship with my father. I had a very, very bad relationship with him. But I realized in the last 2 years of his life, as he was dying, it was not the time to go, you selfish fuck, how could you? You know, I mean, it was time to be there.
Right.
So by the
Complexity.
time
I just
he
want to pause
died-
you and say complexity.
Yes.
Right? Like what a beautiful
Yes.
example of being with complexity. Keep going.
Well, that was called good therapist, you know, father, good therapist, 2 different places. So I get through really grieving and then being okay with it. He was not a big part of my life most of my time. So really his not being there was no, and I'm going through life and I feel very, very good about where I am as far as acceptance with my father having died. I've actually had people say to me, you're not feeling enough. You are not doing it right. And it's, I mean, I know on every level that's silly, that's their craziness, not mine. But I just want to yell at them. I mean, I really am not taking it in. That's the good news. But
Right.
the bad news is, how dare people judge?
Right.
You know, you're not feeling it enough. Go
Totally.
deeper.
Right.
So
And you know, right. And you know, I was actually, somebody was just saying to me this morning, like, you know, healing is not it's not like you wake up in the morning on a Wednesday and you're like, I'm now going to heal, right? It's not how it works, right?
Yeah.
It's an organic process over time. And it's an individual process that's based on you and your disposition. It's based on, you know, it's based on the kind of relationship you have. It's based on all the work that you've done for years and years and years to get to this point. And so, are you asking like what to do with that?
Well,
when
I was
people
wondering if you had a polite response, because my responses are all on the snarky side.
Okay, so I have two. I bet Anne will have one too, but I have two. So one is, the first thing is in situations like that, or if you can anticipate it, sometimes it surprises you. It's helpful to have what I call a permeable shield. So you literally have, like, it's back to the energy thing. You have a shield of energy, right? Where love can come in and out. You can communicate. It's not a hard, like, it's not forged in steel. It's soft. But that stuff just it just bounces off. It's like return to sender, right? Just return to sender energy. And then so you know that you're doing that, and that's a way of protecting yourself. They don't have to know that. And then the second thing is the return to sender energy is like, you know, thank you so much for the input.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it, right? Or like, I know you love me. Thank you so much. Because the truth is, Diane, you don't have to justify your process to anyone. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to, you know, you don't owe them anything. And so
Right.
you can just be gracious about it. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I really appreciate it. It has been a hard time.
A teacher friend did tell me that those 2 words, thank you, were like all you needed anytime.
Yeah.
When they come up with the most outlandish, why don't you this, you just go, thank you.
Exactly, right? Because it's the feeling that somehow you have to explain yourself or justify yourself. And that's the deeper work, right? That's the work in therapy of like, well, why do I feel like I have to explain myself to these people? Because you don't.
Yeah. Okay.
Anne, did you have anything you wanted to say?
I basically wanted to say the same thing. I call it Tefloning. And it's a strategy that I learned in working with Christina, that this is something that I do to be my best self, to be who I want to be. And that's Tefloning, where I've got this Teflon shield that just comes up when something like, because I'm very sensitive and I can get very defensive. So I just engage my Teflon shield. And then I would encourage you to get a phrase that's a routine in your brain. So my phrase is, Thanks for letting me know. And that's it. Period. The end. Amen. And so, you know, if you had a little phrase in your brain, oh, I'm so glad you shared that with me, or whatever, that you can just toss out like a routine whenever anybody says something ridiculous like that. Because, I mean, like Christina said, there's just no point in trying to justify anything. It's not about you. It's about them and their own turmoil that they haven't dealt with.
You know, and it's also like, people don't know what to do, right? They want to be loving, right? A lot of these people who are saying these things to you probably love you dearly. They want the best for you, but you don't even have to engage in that conversation, because this is back to, bye, Don. I'm glad you came. It's back to preserving your energy. It's not worth your energy at all. And I will say, unless it is. Because right, because there might be a relationship where it's a very intimate relationship where you feel like, I really need this person to understand where I'm coming from,
right?
And that, but you get to make that choice.
Yeah.
That I'm investing in you in a way by giving you a more complete response to your comment.
Well, thank you very much.
Sure. And I
that
just want to
that wasn't my flip comment, oh, thank you for sharing. But no, thank you.
exactly, right? I know, we know. I can tell. And I just want to give out a shout out to Kelly Everett, because you're the second child of somebody I've known for a long, long time who's like an all grown up adult who's come to one of my programs or called me. So I'm so glad to see you. I remember when you were like the hockey goalie.
Thank you so much for everything. It was great. I needed it.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm really glad you're here. I'm really glad
Thank
you're here. Your mom was a big part of my life for many, many, many years. And you and I've never met, but I certainly heard a lot about you from your young days. You're
Yeah.
You're an extraordinary woman. That's what I know about you.
Well, we're getting there. Thank you again for everything. It was helpful.
You're
Very.
welcome.
Thanks
You're
for being
welcome. I'm really glad.
Thank you.
You guys have a great day.
Thanks. Bye. All right,
Bye.
we got time for one more question. Liz, I know you joined us late. Is there anything we can do for you kind of quick here on the tail end? Sarah, Tom, Cheryl? One more question before we all sign off?
I have a question that's not about the content, but if anybody wanted to do content, we should do content first.
Hang on a second. Liz, did you have a question? I saw you come off you're on your video.
I just wanted to say hello and sorry, I'd got my timings completely mixed up, so I do apologize. So I'm looking forward to the recording. Thank
Good.
you.
Where are you, Liz?
I'm in London, in England.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ah, London. I look forward to the day when I can think about going to London again.
Yeah, well, me too, actually, to a certain extent. We can barely go out still. It's pretty tight, so.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming. I attended something earlier this week and got the time zone wrong, and they didn't record it, and I was like, wah, wah.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing the recording, hearing the recording. That's great. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, it'll probably be out tomorrow.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, sure.
Well, the percentage of testosterone is raised to 20%, so I'm satisfied I can leave now.
Okay.
Early on, it was pretty low.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for coming and for sticking around and asking your questions. And we'll see you all on the 8th of October.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.